Hey traders, John Howell here. Just wanted to share a story with you. Right now it's a Sunday morning for me right now, and I'm just going for a walk this morning, and I just wanted to do a video for you guys to come on and man, look at my hair. It's all crazy this morning. It doesn't matter. But I wanted to share a story with you guys, and hopefully this sort of resonates with you, because I can feel a lot of people's pain when they enter these markets, right? They enter the world called trading. You know, when I first started trading, I didn't even know any. I didn't even know like what the stock market was. It just didn't. Nothing that didn't exist to me. You know what I mean? And the thing is that what ended up happening was, again, like I didn't even know what the stock market was when I first started getting involved with it. And because I grew up with my family, right? I grew up with a big family, 5 brothers, 2 sisters, and mum and dad. And so basically 9 people, right, in a 3-bedroom housing commission or government assisted house. And it was a very, very hard upbringing because I never had the stability of home was never there, because I just like, firstly for me personally, it was always like, I couldn't get things, you know what I mean? Like I was never really good at math. I was never really good at math. I could never really focus. Like people said I had ADHD at school, and I was always in the low grades as well too. You know what I mean? Like I just never really got good grades at school. The only thing that I was okay at, which was sports for me. And so school was a struggle for me, and it was quite hard for me to get ahead in school. And I'd moved for different schools and stuff like that, but it was always hard for me to get ahead. And so therefore when I left school, I just went and worked for my father. Initially I was around 16, maybe 17 years of age at that time, as a landscape gardener, right? Because that's all I could do. I wanted to start earning some money, and growing up, when I grew up, it was always hard because one, I couldn't understand things. I learned how to read more after school than I did during school. And the reason why is because I think like that label ADHD, right? It's like, what is that? Like I become I become such a much better reader in my life by reading the material that I was really interested in. I think that label. The thing is, I don't think I couldn't focus because I just wasn't really interested in that. I wasn't really interested in like where's Mars and geometry and geography and history and stuff like that. And I think it's important to understand history, but back then I couldn't really focus. But when I started to really dig deep into material that I was really fascinated about, which became like trading for me. It became a thing that I started to slowly get better and better and better at, right, by reading. And so like with my growing up, I'd move from school to school to school, and I was always like a bad kid, right? Like a bad kid as in I just hated school, really. I really hated school. I remember my first time I went from year 5 to year 6, and year 6 was actually a new school for me. And the very first day, I think I punched the kid out and told the teacher where to go. I gave him the finger, basically, verbally. And so therefore, I got detention for like a week, and then I almost got the cane that week as well too. And so that's the sort of person that I was. I just couldn't really focus because I wasn't intellectually smart, and it was a hard time for me to get ahead. And then having the family where, there was a time there where, I grew up and it was really hard because my dad initially actually had a home, and had a home, but he actually lost that home back to high interest rates back in the 80s. I'm not sure if you guys overseas went through that. I'm not sure, but here in Australia, we went through there was a thing called Home Fund. It was very, very, very similar, I think, to what actually happened in America. I'm not sure, but my dad ended up losing his house because interest rates got to like something like 18%, something like that. And because he lost his house, we moved from a pretty good area to, again, back into a government assisted area. And so I think my dad ended up getting the house because he didn't have to have like like they'll do it in America, right? Where like really you didn't have to prove your income and so on and so forth. As long as you had a small deposit or whatever, you could get in the house. So I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened with my father, how he ended up getting that house. I was really young at that time, but then getting into my sort of young teens, what ended up happening was that's when we moved to a government assisted house, and then that was when everything sort of fell apart for my family. It was really, really bad. My mum grew up with drugs and so on and so forth. And what ended up happening was there was a time there where my dad was working really hard for his business, his landscaping business, to take us for a holiday. And then I was actually working for my dad at this time. And then what ended up happening was he found out that my mum had been doing drugs. And not only has she been cheating on my father, well, it's actually he's my stepfather. My real father left me. My real father left me when I was 2 years of age, and then my stepfather's been basically my father since I was 2 years of age. So that's why I call him my father. But that's a bit of another story as well too for you guys. And so what ended up happening was my father went to cash a check basically to start I think he did something for like a business, or he wanted to book something for the holiday for the whole family, right? Because there's 9 people, right? So it's quite expensive for dad. One thing I learned from my dad was work ethic, right? He used to work really hard, and that's one thing he used to push me always work really hard. But then he found out that my mum stole like $50,000 from my dad. And my dad wasn't even keeping track. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but initially it was something like $50,000 that my mum ended up forging checks and so on and so forth from my mum, and she was basically putting it into her arm, and she got really, 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 really bad in a really bad way. She was basically cheating on my dad with one of the druggies that she was hooking up with and sleeping with. And my whole family went downhill big time from there. And I remember like half of because 5 brothers, 2 sisters, right? So like there's actually a family of 7. So half my brothers and sisters went to my dad's mum and dad, my dad's nan and pop side, or my dad's nan and pop side. And then the other half brothers and sisters went to my mum's nan and pop side. So basically there was grandparents taking care of us for a while. My mum went to rehab. My dad ended up just living by himself for a while, and that was sort of the upbringing of my life. You know what I mean? Like there was never really stability in my life. There was never really all that sort of that's what I grew up with. You know what I mean? So here I am, just basically not really having any stability in my life. Not really. And I think that's where a lot of that sort of stuff came to where I've been a recovering codependent myself. And it's been a long journey, that codependency of wanting those attaboys and wanting those, you're amazing and all this sort of stuff, right? And you get it like, oh, thank you so much. And then 2 minutes later, you want it again. And it's never enough, and it's off-putting to people. And so that's where I think I got my codependency from. And there's still a little bit there with my codependency. I like that attaboy and so on and so forth. And then as soon as someone says something bad about you, it's like, oh, you go into a crave. You go into a back cave and cry or something like that. I don't do that anymore, but I used to. After being on YouTube for a while, you get pretty thick skin. But growing through that, it was such a turbulent time in my life. And I look at my childhood, and there's nothing against my parents. Like, I don't hate my parents. Actually, long story short, my mum and dad are still back together right now. They're still together right now. Like, they end up getting back together and so on and so forth. And they end up moving out of that place and into something a bit better. And, and things. And the family ended up coming back together after a few years of my mum doing rehab and my dad and so on and so forth. Until the authorities said it was okay or something like that. And it was really tough because I just didn't, I was never really in a place of just understanding like what's this all about, and I remember like wearing clothes to school, and it was always hand-me-downs, right? I always got these hand-me-downs, and I remember that there was this family right next door to us when it comes to when it comes to where I was living, right? And there was a family next door to us that they always had these really nice clothes on all the time. It's like they had these nice Nikes on and Adidas, pants on and jackets and shirts and stuff like that. And it was always, it's like, wow, look at their clothes they're wearing, right? Oh wow, look at their shoes, they're amazing. And the shirts we're wearing were from like, they were just really low quality stuff. And I was always like, wow, look at that. And then I was always excited because for a few years there where we're living, the family that had all these Nikes and Adidas clothes and so on and so forth, after a year or so, then one of the wear them, they hand them down to us. So we started wearing Nikes. I still felt pretty good because I was wearing, even though it was secondhand, I was still happy because I was wearing that. But it was always a hand me down, and going through that, it was always like we just never had that sort of stuff, And so then when I started to go through life, I really found it hard to find my place in life, because I tried so many different things. And me and my father ended up having a big falling out. That's a long story. I'll get into that another time, but I ended up moving out of home. Well, he kicked me out, but yeah. And so therefore I started doing all these different jobs from, packing toilet paper at 3 o'clock in the morning to, the lollipop person where you stop and go and, and I would do different labouring jobs for different people. And, I'd work on here in Australia, right? There's these big freeways that have been built, and I was one of these labourers who'd just be planting like thousands and thousands of plants every single week, for 10, 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week sometimes, it was actually really good money, Well, I thought it was really good money back then. And so I came from that there. So when I got to a place in my life where I met my girlfriend, she was a lawyer, but she also wanted to leave her job as well. I was washing cars for a car dealership, earning around $400 a week, somewhere there. My rent was a couple of $100 a week, so therefore you can see, to live on basically $200 a week, I was just basically just getting by. I used to catch a train to work. I didn't actually have a car. I couldn't afford a car at the time. And then that's when my girlfriend got this DVD, right? Like learning how to trade the stock market and learning, it's all about investing, right? It's about business entrepreneurship. It was about property investing. It was about real estate investing, and also stock market trading, so on and so forth. And I had no idea about any of that sort of stuff, really. I knew people had done well out of property because my dad said the only way to really get ahead in life is buy property and just hold it for a long, long time. And he was right back then. But that was my first introduction to the stock market, right? To trading the stock market. But there was a few things that I had to battle with, I believe, now looking back on my life when it comes to trading. And the first thing was my belief in myself. One, do I even deserve this? Who do I think I am to make $100,000 a year from trading? It's like I grew up with a family doing drugs, and barely just getting by. And here I am making $400 a week, and I want to make $40,000 a month. You know what I mean? It's like, or $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million. Who do I think I am? You know what I mean? And that was a big hard thing for me to journey. The self-sabotage was real and big in a lot, because there was times where I did well with trading, right? I started to pick up well and I started to do well with trading, and then subconsciously, unconsciously, I'd start to do some really dumbass shit, and not only would I lose all that profit, I might have made 10 grand from trading, but not only would I do that, but then I give that back, but then I'd blow up my whole account. And then I'd save a bit of money, and then, and after a few months of paper trading and testing and looking at different things and looking at different courses and different robots, if you're ever into robots, guys, it's not the be all and end all. Because I never understood how the stock market works. So I look at the Forex market, I look at options trading and the spread, and doing spreads with options trading and credit spreads and debit spreads. I look at the futures market and the Forex market, and I look at all these different markets, and I just never understood how the markets actually operated and how they actually work. And And so therefore I went through a lot of journey with that, and that was always tough because I just wanted to get ahead. And for me, I wanted to get ahead because I was sick of being broke. I was sick of not having money. You know, like with growing up with my family, like I just shared with you in my story, we had nothing. And I really, really, really wanted to get ahead in life, and I was just sick of being broke. And I remember saying to my um, to my girlfriend at the time, who ended up getting this DVD that shared the introduction to me about the investing and so on and so forth. I was just saying, like, I just want this so bad. And for me, it was fascinating because for me back then, it was more about, you know, man, if I could earn 100 grand a year, $10,000 a month, and not have to work, oh my goodness, that would be so amazing. That would be so incredible, you know. And it's fascinating it's amazing to see that, because look at the income that I'm on right now, from trading and being involved with the markets, is just, it just blows my mind to see where I'm at. But what's going to happen is that you're going to get smacked so hard from these markets. It's going to happen. Whether you get smacked initially or you do really well, your ego gets involved. And I've done both this year. I got smacked initially, then I did really well, then I got smacked, and then I had to come back again, and so on and so forth. You are going to get smacked hard. That's what's likely to happen. Even if you do really well, even if you've made a lot of money, really, like, even if you made a lot of money right now. I know one story recently, a guy who made $1 million from trading crypto, who got lucky. Crypto. No, not crypto, my bad. I think it was trading options in the markets. And because he thought he knew it all right, he jumped on just a really big bull market. Guess what? He lost a whole lot. And now he's struggling well. What's going to happen is this, right? You're going to get smacked around. But I always want you to think about this as you're going through your trading journey, is that, one, this is just the path that you're going to go down, right? You're likely going to get a lot of smacks. And you might be going through that right now when you're trading. But secondly, the big thing that kept me in the game every time I'd blow up my account, and then I'd save a little bit of money, then I'd go back in again, and then I'd blow that up, and then I'd save a little bit more money, and I'd go back in and blow that up. And, you know, it's like, oh man, fuck's sake, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sick of doing, you know, and that's where my first probably 5 or so years was just horrible, because I just seemed like I'd just never get anywhere, you know what I mean? The thing that stuck with me with the game is this, and I really want you to think about this here, okay? If I quit this thing called trading, right? Because I can see the market there. I can see that there's money there to be made. I just got to figure this game out. I just got to figure it out a bit more. If I quit now, for the rest of my life, I know that I'm going to be stuck in a dead-end job, earning probably 50, 60 grand a year. And that's what life's going to be like. I'm not going to have any freedom. I'm not going to have any choice in life. I'm going to be saying yes sir, no sir, 3 backs for, bend over, do whatever you want to do, mister. You know, because that's exactly what fucking the whole system's all about. Or I can just stick at this thing, and I can slowly get better. And it may take me a long time to find. It may take me 10 years to get this thing, like really understand it. But once I understand it, and once I start to get it, guess what? Then money is a byproduct of starting to really get it, right? Because once I started to understand it, like, if you can find, especially with option trades, right, you can do 100%, 200% in a couple of days sometimes, you know, even a few weeks sometimes, like looking at really good setups. And you don't need that many too good setups to go from $1,000, you know, if you look at double, right, 1,000 into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, 8 into 16, 16 into 32, 32 into, you know, you do. I'm now losing numbers, right? But if you just do that, how many doubles do you actually need for you to become a millionaire? And that was the big thing for me. So I really want to. The big thing for me that kept me going and kept me going and kept me going in the early stages was that I just didn't want to. I didn't want to be part of this life anymore. And I knew that if I did quit, that I would never, ever, ever, ever have the freedom that I wanted to have in life. But if I just kept at it, and I just kept slowly learning, you know, and I kept slowly understanding about the markets and how they work, and yes, I'm going to get smacked. I'm going to keep getting smacked down. but eventually I'm going to get it, right? Because especially if you're getting smacked, but then you look at yourself like, then what did I do wrong here? And if you continue pointing the finger at someone else and saying, it's always someone else's problem. So it was the government, it was the market's this, the market's that, this person, the coach, blah blah blah. No, you're never going to get it, right? Because you're not getting the lessons. But if you say, okay, what did I do here, and how can I get better? That getting better, you'll start to learn the lessons, and then you'll start to get better slowly, right? Then you make more mistakes, you slowly get better, and then your 10-year plan, or even your 20-year plan from now looks so much better, or even 10 years, right? Your 10-year plan right now looks so much better than you stuck into a fucking dead-end job, hoping and praying that you're going to have some money at the end of the day, right? Because just as before, once you start to get it, once you start to get these markets, you start to see opportunities because you start to see patterns and things happen. Just even recently, right, what's happened in the stock market? I've seen this before. That's the reason why I was prepared for it, and I've done really, really, really well in those last few weeks because I was prepared for this thing to start to rise, and it's rise sharply too. It's like, wow, here we go. Because I've seen this before, so that's what's going to happen with you with that there. So my whole story here is this: is that I don't give a rat's ass where you've come from or shit, like where you've come from. You see my story here, and you see what's going on there. You guys can do it, but please don't quit, because I promise you, as I said before, if you quit, you're quitting on your life. If you do quit, then don't ever complain that you don't ever have freedom and you don't ever have what you want in life. But if you do stick with it and continue to learn, continue to say, okay, where do I need to get better? What do I need to focus on? I promise you, 10 years from now, you're going to look back and say, you know what? Yeah, maybe my first 5, 6, 7, 8 years it was a struggle, and I was trying to figure it out, and I just kept smacked, and I buy different courses, and I try different systems and different markets and all this, but eventually I started to learn it. I promise you that looking back 10 years from now, or it might be in 5 years from now, you might pick it up much quicker than I did, right? It took me a while to get it. You're going to look back saying, you know what, I'm so grateful that I stuck with that, because now I'm seeing patterns, now I'm starting to get it, and now I'm starting to do really well. And you doing $100,000 a year is just a piece of the cake, and before you know it, you're doing $500,000 a year, then $1 million a year, and then, $5 million a year, and $10 million a year, and you're looking back and like, wow, and that's, 20 years from now. So you got to ask yourself the question: if you want to quit and you do quit, just say, are you prepared to stick at a job for the rest of your life, just getting basic bullshit wage for the rest of your life and not having any freedom? Because if not, stick at what you're doing right now. Your 10-year plan is so much better just by continue to stick at the markets and continue to get better than any other job out there. So I hope this helps you out today, guys. If you'd like to learn more about how I actually trade the markets, my system, and so on and so forth, go to Johns, Johns, freetraining.com. That's Johns, Johns, freetraining.com. On there, it's a webinar. Join the webinar, and I share more about my story there, and my system and how I trade the markets. Speak to you soon, guys.